Good afternoon, scholars. Welcome to your Wednesday lit class. Let's get into the numbers. Huge improvement in terms of number of scholars getting their work in, guys. Great job. It's a 12% jump up from yesterday. Again, my short-term push for this week. I'll be happy once we're starting to hit 50 and above. But we can also work to get above that. You guys who are watching this video, you're doing your part because I assume you're getting your work in. If you've got some friends who you're in contact with, if you're not sure that they're doing the same, encourage them, give them a nudge to get on, get online, get your work done, right? Because you're not going to get these days and these weeks back in your education, guys. So it's really important that you're really pushing yourself to realize that this is not a vacation. We're not on summer vacation yet. We're still in the school year, and if you're not doing your work, you're really just putting yourself behind. But I don't have to tell you that because you're doing your work. All right, couple. Yesterday we looked at if the jury was becoming more subjective or objective. The first day I gave this assignment, everyone was saying they're being subjective. They were only using their opinion and their biases to make their decisions. Today I started to see kind of a split where some kids were like, "No, I think they're starting to use the facts now," and other kids still saying, "No, they're still being subjective." So we're going to look at two scholars who had differing opinions on this. The first one was Israel Nunez. Keep using my lawyer's work. Israel thinks they're becoming more objective because they're actually starting to use facts, evidence to back up their claim. He gave, in his context, he says the jurors started to realize they needed to convince juror 8 with facts and evidence and try to prove the 8th juror wrong. So he says because they start going over the facts of the case, they're becoming more objective because they start going through the proof or what this lawyer said and that lawyer said that made them change their minds. Israel, if you take a look at your color-coded work, we need a little bit more green and maybe a little bit less yellow. As you can see in the second quote here, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences long. The quote should never be that long. Try to keep it to 2 sentences, 3 if they're very, very short. That's my push for Israel, but also for all scholars. Try to keep your evidence concise, more green, more you explaining the importance or analyzing that evidence and how it proves your claim. Great job, Israel. Always bringing it back to your point. In your conclusion, your point was that they're becoming more objective to convince the 8th juror. You did a great job revisiting that point in your conclusion. Mr. Mirage Jamal had a different opinion. He says that the jury is becoming more subjective. According to 12 Angry Men. Mirage, you don't have to put that, buddy. You don't have to put according to 12 Angry Men. We know we're writing about 12 Angry Men. You can just start the sentence, Maybe you could say at this point in the story, right? The jurors are saying bad stuff about kids who come from a certain place or kids from this generation. The third juror gets mad at kids of this generation and says, quote, "It's the kids, the way they are nowadays, angry, hostile." This proves the jury is becoming more subjective because the jurors are using their opinion instead of the facts to judge this kid and kids in general. While trying to convince the 8th juror, the 4th juror says, quote, "Slums are breeding grounds for criminals. I know it. So do you. It's no secret. Children from slum backgrounds are potential menaces to society." Again, Mirage, that one was 4 sentences. Pick your 2 or maybe even your 1 that say what you wanted to say. This also proves that the jury is becoming more subjective because the jurors are being biased against the kids from slums and kids in general? Did you miss a word, Mirage? This leads me to conclude that I think the jury is becoming more subjective and less objective. That was really similar to what I had, guys. I said, you'll see in my, again, I hope you should be looking at the exemplar that I provide each day to compare your answers to mine, but also compare your style to mine, so that you can pick up on some writing techniques. I wrote subjective. I could have argued that they were becoming more objective too, because Israel, I do agree, they are starting to talk about the facts of the case. But like Mirage was drawn to, those last couple pages, they were talking about the facts. Things really went off the tracks, and they started saying some really nasty negative things that had nothing to do with the facts of the case. So I lean subjective for this response, but I could also argue objective. I said the jury is still being subjective in this section. Before I go into it, I want you to notice my color coding. Look how the majority of the paragraph is green. If you compare this to even my two, like Israel and Mirage, you guys had the two best responses. But if you still look at your responses, look how there's a ton of yellow, which is fine. Your quotes are too long. It could have cut down the yellow there, but there's just not enough green, guys. You really bringing it home. Mirage, both of your analyses were one sentence. Israel, same with you. Analysis can't be one sentence, guys. So let's take a look at mine so I can show you some suggestions and some a model on how to make your analyses just more than one sentence. I said the jury is still being subjective in this section. They began talking about the facts of the case, but then the jurors' racist biases took over the conversation. The fourth juror believes the boy killed his dad because of where he grew up. Quote, children from slums are potential menaces to society. Notice, guys, I also put the page number where I got that from. You should start citing where you got the evidence from. Okay, just put it in parentheses, what page. Right after you can put that. Here's my analysis. Fourth clearly believes that all kids born in the slums are one and the same without taking anything else into account. He isn't using the facts of the case to make his decision. He's using prejudices he's held since long before the trial. The 10th juror believes the same thing as the fourth juror, but to an even more extreme degree. Quote, the kids that crawl out of these places are real trash. Page 18. While the fourth juror was basing a judgment of the neighborhoods poor children grow up in, the 10th juror bashes the children themselves. He dehumanizes them by calling them trash. His racist view of the defendant is going to make it much easier to sentence. Oh, my bad, guys. I meant for. Much easier. See how you got to reread what you write, guys, because you find those little mistakes that you made if you didn't reread it out loud. His racist view of the defendant is going to make it much easier for juror 10 to sentence him to die because he believes the world. See, this is confusing, guys. These pronouns. Who am I talking about? It's becoming much easier for juror 10 to sentence the boy to die because juror 10 believes the world would be better off without people like the defendant. In conclusion, while some jurors are being objective, others are still being completely subjective. Okay? I hope this example helps, especially my example of how to kind of really explain your thinking. Really remember that the job of your analysis is to prove how your evidence, your quote specifically, proves your point. Right? You can't just do that in one sentence. You got to really explain it in 2 to 3 sentences. All right, today's assignment, you are similar to, you're going to have an evidence tracker again. This time you're going to be tracking something different. Today it is juror 8's turn to talk about his thoughts in the case. you are determining, you're going to look at the other jurors' reactions and questions and statements while juror 8 kind of shares his doubts or his thoughts. And the focus question is very simple. Is he able to get any of the jurors to change their minds? Okay. If you look at your exit ticket today, agree or disagree. Down here, agree or disagree, juror 8 successfully raises doubts in the case. Use your best evidence to support your response. All right. So in this case, guys, you're fine with 1, but you got to find 1 piece of evidence. Is he successful in getting other people to start to doubt? Because everyone was so sure that he was guilty, right? As juror starts to give his thoughts, is he successful on that, or are people still stuck on their votes of no, he did it? Okay. Find 2 pieces of evidence that could be used to prove that he is successful. Find 2 pieces of evidence that could prove that he's not successful. And then whichever one you feel more strongly about and you have better evidence for, use that to focus as the focus of your ASAC response. All right. I can't wait to see your guys' opinions on this, to see who says he is and who says he isn't. What's your fact that proves it? And more importantly, how are you going to really prove it in your analyses? Your analysis, I want these to be the longest parts of your paragraphs today, guys. I know you can do it. Enjoy these pages, and I will see you tomorrow.